Thank you, sir. Thank you for that very kind introduction, a warm welcome. We're back. How cool is that? Well, actually, no, are we? Raise your hand if this is your first Superweek. Newbies, so many newbies. Nice. To you all, I say, welcome. It's a pleasure. Everybody else, who's been here before? Old hands? Welcome back, family. Welcome, new friends. What a fantastic... Yeah, go. It's been too long. It's 2 years. 2 years of lots of change, lots of bad habits. Like, sorry, I do want to check. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, we've all done that. Okay. So yeah, finally you can see my screen. And also this session is being recorded. That's a fourth wall break of the fourth wall there. So we are recording, obviously. So yes, it's been a challenging couple of years, and we're restarting. See this as a start again. Okay, we're doing a reboot. So you're getting questions, and you're in your mind you're thinking, well, what do we do now? How do we proceed? How do we make the very best opportunity of this reboot? So I want to, not too humbly, give you the only roadmap you're going to need for the next 18 months. Now, 87% of you, just thinking, 87% of you will be quite cynical about that kind of headline. And interestingly, what would you expect to see with such cynicism? Something like this. I think we're familiar with such an interesting output, typically starting on step one. Every roadmap starts with step one, probably a discovery phase. We love a discovery phase with some sort of divide and conquer. Inevitably, you're going to have a data lake alignment in there somewhere, and because now we know that Google Analytics is illegal in the EU, allegedly, we'll mention Adobe Analytics or something like that. We're going to lead then on, rather pointlessly, to cookieless playbooks, because third-party deprecation, I get it right, has happened. So stakeholder interviews, in between stakeholder interviews and internal syncs. You may fit in a mental health webinar, and then something about Flock, or now it's called Topics or Flopics or whatever, I don't know. It changes so fast. Then later in the year, in Q5, we inevitably have to showcase our Web3, capturing first-party data using TTD, UID 2.0, or whatever it's called. Going forwards, as every roadmap should say, we are going to have a unified vision of our CDP in a multi-cloud ecosystem via a distributed, autonomous organization. Of course, yes, these are the buzzwords we expect. This is what we're expecting to find. Segueing neatly into a non-fungible project wheelbarrow, whatever that may be, we'll have a metaverse synergy regarding privacy, release the DAP, and then you can double down into 2020X. This is the kind of roadmap that you might expect, and if you're one of the 87% who would be cynical about that, then I'm with you. You have every right to be very disappointed if that is the kind of roadmap that's being presented. It's meaningless. It doesn't have any value. It doesn't have any substance. It's missing an awful lot. What is it missing? The secret sauce, a real purpose. You know, there are key ingredients that are missed out here. Wally is here. I'll save you looking. I made sure he was in there. There's no real indication as to what this roadmap is actually solving for. There's such an open question. What are we actually solving? How are we solving it? What is the technical solution? What are the nuts and bolts that we're actually dealing with? How is it going to scale? And can you actually take this kind of roadmap that we saw just now to your CMO and say, here's a business case. Here's how it's going to scale. No, it's so empty. We don't have all of these things. So we do need to go through the nuts and bolts, the what. What does this roadmap achieve? What does it do? As well as the why. What trends are we solving for? What headlines are we now dealing with that this roadmap needs to address and tell us how to proceed? And joining the what and the why with the how, so we can say, well, these features are solving these challenges, and this is how we're going to build a business case. So we need to include these ingredients. First one is defining the problem. So cherished colleague Miles, Younger of Media.Monks, very neatly phrased the problem as being very much like the classic physics problem, three-body problem, where you have three orbiting bodies in a very complex system, so complex as they orbit, you cannot predict where one is going to go. If they zig, do you zag? You don't know, you can't tell. It's impossible to predict the paths. We have an ever-changing relationship between three key ingredients here. Main one, the big one being tech, okay? What are the likes of Google going to do? What is Apple going to do? What is ITP going to look like in terms of the regulation, the antitrust, CCPA, GDPR? How are they going to change? What else is going to come out in terms of you can't transfer data? And mix into that the media field and the vendor field public opinion in terms of what are people going to react to next, how these components affect each other, make it very, very hard to put together any sort of meaningful roadmap. This is a challenge in terms of being able to give you an 18-month guide what to do. We need to cater for all these difficulties. So what's the best strategy here? What's the way we can take this forward? Not necessarily solving for every specific issue as such, but being prepared for that change. Change readiness, being ready for change, and building on a foundation of privacy first, really understanding what the first-party data pivot looks like, and embracing the probabilistic rather than deterministic data that we're going to be dealing with. Always activating, always having purpose for your data, always having business impact on the bottom line. And the secret sauce here is the automation. Let's go into these in more detail. Okay. Starting with privacy first, it's not so much, at least in part, we're talking about a tech change, but it's very much a cultural change, very much a difference in vocabulary within your organization, within your company, with your clients, talking about data collection, data gathering, not data capture. It's a very simple way of looking at privacy first and really understanding that embracing that regulatory spirit, embracing the transparency around what data you're collecting, how you're using it, means an awful lot. And it will change how you consider the next pillar of collection. Yes, third-party data exits, that's fair enough. Yes, we're going to focus on first-party, but how? What is the fundamental change here? Some would say it's a regression to when I started 20, 25 years ago in terms of moving the logic, moving the data collection off of the client back to the server. But, as I'll show you, that is particularly impactful, especially when we're talking server to server. And this is inevitably going to align with what you're going to do with the data. You know, data has to have a purpose. If it has a purpose, if you can recognize the purpose, it will give you value, which necessarily aligns the data that you're collecting to be activated, which then brings us again back to the foundation of privacy first. We're only collecting what we absolutely need. So this all ties together really nicely, following up with the automation. Really the only reliable, confident, accurate way of scaling in a commercially sound manner. So all of these pillars come together very nicely in terms of preparing for growth. So let's go into more detail around this privacy first thing, okay? So often I have the question, who wins? Is it the publishers? Is it the advertisers? Is it the users? Very seldom do people say, is the user the winner? And actually, there are no winners. Let's stop treating it like a zero-sum game, okay? There is mutual value to be had here. Survey by the Drum said half of US consumers say, yeah, I'll accept your cookies, but I don't really know what you're doing with it, and I'm a bit concerned what you're doing. What is the concern? Well, they don't know. They have concern, but they're not really sure why. I suggest it's because we exhibit nefarious, dark patterns like this. We're going to track you. That's basically what this banner is saying. This banner is saying, be scared, be afraid. I'm hoovering your data, and I'm going to mess with it. It's not cool. It's down there. It's very tiny. At Media.Monks, we try to be a lot more transparent. We try to give accept and decline. We try to be clear about what we're doing with cookies. We say that transparency is a real key. If we don't do these things, we can very easily end up with this very plain, it's very fast site, but no trackers, no ads, no color, no richness. It's a sad way to be. Not just for apps, not just for websites, but covering apps as well. How many different variations are we seeing with ask app not to track, ask app not allow tracking, allow? It's all tracking. So many different phrases are really fundamentally designed to make you say, yeah, you can have my data. Making you do it, not telling you why necessarily. I mean, your data will be used to deliver personalized ads. Okay, that's not so bad. We track to measure advertising performance. We want to see how good our ads are. That's a little bit more open. It's a little bit more transparent. But the same applies. Let's go away from privacy. Let's talk about first class, really first class, first party data and how we get there. It's not Web3, regret to say, but this is not my client, not my work. Steen, this is IIH Nordic. Did a really fantastic piece of work. It's on a public case study. The link's on the slide. You will get all the slides, don't worry. Really excellent piece of work where IIH Nordic were working with Nemlig, a large Danish grocer, implementing server-side data collection, and the richness of the data volume that was apparent through server-to-server, or server-side data collection speaks for itself. It's impressive. Not only is more data available, there are numerous benefits about the server-side data collection. I mean, what was it, 2018 or 2019 when Google announced server-side data collection here? 2018, I think, was it? Yeah. So we're what, a number of years down the line. And now we're really starting to see the value, the real value of data collection, not just in terms of doing less on the client side. You've got a faster app, you've got a faster site. The data quality. Another case study here around Square seeing 40% increase in reported conversions. That is data that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. That is loss of signal. That is loss of insight. It's really harmful. But here's the big thing. Coming back to that first pillar, it's compliant. It's ITP compliant by nature. So it's not a zero-sum game. It's a win-win-win-win all the way through. And we've seen this as well. This is Media.Monks.com. We compare client-side data collection with server-side. And just a very trivial...
2020, just 2 years ago.
2020, beg pardon, thank you. So we collect data client-side, classic GTM, GA, and we see engagement metrics dropping off a cliff after 7 days. Go server-side, where we can better remember people, better understand their longer-term behavior, not just in terms of more people, but look at the change in the Y scale here. From 1 minute 40 peaking, we're in 2 minutes, so we're seeing more people engaging more. That's a hell of a signal. It's fantastic stuff. Multiple benefits we can talk about with server-side data collection. Primarily data stewardship. That's your responsibility. It gives you a lot more power, a lot more responsibility to make sure what data you are collecting is correctly redacted for privacy, for security, and making sure that the right first-party data is going to the right place at the right time. That's immense power, immense control. And we'll tack onto that the performance again. Just doing less on the client means that you get more speed, the user experience is better, the goodness is just in multiple layers. Whether or not you go down the server-side route, even if you are still collecting your data client-side, it still matters, right? It's not data capture. I want to end the word capture with data. Data collection. It's not a hostage situation after all. Make sure it's always consented. That's obvious. Whether it's client to server or server to server doesn't matter. And as said earlier on, we're aligning what we're collecting with what the business needs so that we can activate it. Before we get on to the activation, this brave new world of probabilistic versus deterministic data. It's been around a while, okay? Nobody mentioned cookieless in my presence this week, please. It has been a case that browsers since the year dot have been giving you the option to say, no, I don't want third-party cookies dropped. Fine, okay, that's good. But it's growing, and it's growing a lot more with third-party data, and it's growing a lot more with first-party data as well. We are seeing data loss, but we have the ability and we have the technology now to be able to fill in the blanks with a high-quality signal, okay? So Google with enhanced conversions and consent mode are already quite honestly saying this is model data and you've got a good signal coming out here. Whether or not Safe Haven, Trade Desk and those guys with a third-party resolution, they may claim deterministic. Most likely there is some probabilistic data in there as well. Or because browsers have this ability and users are saying, no, you're not tracking me. So what do we do? What do we do with that big gap? Well, this is one of our clients went down the route of GA4 with consent mode and started to fill in their blanks. And there was a lot of blanks. There's a huge difference in, admittedly, the non-model data, but from that non-model data, the impact on other metrics that do require modeling, channel performance, especially in terms of a key metric they were using, the average purchase revenue per user, was actually lower using model data, thus showing that they had a false positive. They were at risk of pushing a lot of money down a channel that wasn't actually performing. So stopping that kind of destructive business decision with a better signal in the data is a massive win. So we've got better quality data. We've got compliance. Still, we're coming back to the first principle of privacy first. We're still respecting user privacy. We're in a good position. Now I'm going to hit you with a big, bright pink slide to wake you up a bit, just because. Now we'll talk about the activation. So another survey by the drum. Nearly half of consumers say they are happy saying, yeah, I consent, you can have my data, that's all fine and good, but I want something back. I want something in return. This seems fair. I called it, I said it wasn't a zero-sum game, and it's not. This is an exchange of data, okay? So what do we do? What do we give them? What is the nature of the activation? McKinsey, another survey, McKinsey said during the last 2 years, quite understandably, a lot of people have tried a new way of shopping. Online, membership. Of those who shop online, there's a high degree of them that expect personalization. They expect context. They expect to be remembered. They expect to have their choices understood. And if you fail to do that, they feel frustration. But if you get it right, if you do activate the data, if you are capable of adding context, way more likely to purchase from you. Add to that, way more likely to repurchase from you. And that's hitting your lifetime value very nicely indeed. And they're very likely, much more likely, to recommend you because they say, hey, here's a good experience. Here's a site that remembers my choices, makes a recommendation, understands what I like, what I don't like. That's really activating the data. It's a very simple, fundamental, some would say obvious activation of the data that has massive bottom line impact. Now, across all of these tactics that we've talked about, across all of these nuts and bolts, underlying all of these is the automation. It's not trivial. There is some clever scripting in there. But the work that Media.Monks have done with Mondelez is well documented. We've done a number of case studies. We're really building in this automation into what we do for Mondelez so that it has future impact for the next 6 to 8 global heads of media. Now, focused mostly on this reduction in complexity. By automation, we're essentially taking humans out of the equation. We're using humans a lot less. We are understanding what processes were typically done by humans. Can they be replaced with a machine? Can they be automated for reliability, for confidence, for speed, for accuracy? Much less human involvement has a big part, it's not all down to it, has a big part in having a global ROI impact of upwards of 10% for this company. Example of how we have done that with GA GTM automation. Mass deployment of GA and GTM across the Mondelez brand sites. You may know Oreos, say for example, wonderfully accidentally vegan confectionery. Toblerone, we all know Toblerone, that triangle chocolate, all Mondelesian brands. So all of these brand sites have very similar metrics, very similar measurement. And knowing that we are measuring the same thing again and again via these automated deployments means that we can compare the performance of these different sites and compare apples with apples. This is golden data to a brand with multiple sites. Indeed, the same with Sidearm, which was published recently, across 1,400 sites. This was hours rather than days of effort. 200 hours of manual data entry saved, meaning Sidearm Sports get improved data quality, they get faster time to insights, and it's live and actually repeatable. So what? All right, this is all very good. We're seeing some more meat on the bone here. We're seeing more robust and rounded roadmap. But what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that this is what we've done. This isn't just an idea. This isn't just a lovely set of slides I've made for you. This is what we have practiced over the last 4+ years, going from individual silos of a couple of hundred people each to one unit, one organization of over 7,000 people within Media.Monks. This is our roadmap. This is how we operate. And this is how we get our clients to operate as well. So we practice these things, we do these things, we've done these things, and you've seen how we've scaled across data and digital media and content. Everything that happens on the screen, we can apply this roadmap across all of these pillars. So I'm giving this to you. This is how we've had success. So I want to give you the same path. I've even put a nice CMO-friendly, swoopy version back in there for you that is more sensible. Okay. And what does this mean? So I want to come back to where we started in this conversation, using dear friend Matt's quote here in terms of don't confuse maturity with complexity. I think this is very wise. Maturity is quite often confused with having so many different shiny objects, so many flashing lights, so much tech going on. It's not the same. Maturity actually is being able to respond appropriately to your environment and how it changes. So come back to that 3-body problem. Think how complex this environment is. Think how complex these 3 bodies and their orbital patterns make planning a roadmap. And having a roadmap, having a framework like this that gives you the ability to be responsive, the ability to change, the ability to react accordingly and appropriately is the superpower that this roadmap is going to give you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you, 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 thank you. Thank you, Doug. Really appreciate it. We're going to have a little bit of time for some questions.